So there was an example you guys had actually where it was an annual one. That for the annual CalSTRS, that would be the same thing, right, Nicole? So if for 2% it's 60, if it was ongoing, if it was, I think the example was that it was a limited term payment because it was 29, it was just for that particular year. But someone mentioned, well, what if it was, the contract was for over a few years and it didn't say it was just for 1 year? And we said it was not limited term in that situation. But if it was just once at that year for the annual amount for class size, then it would be, let me get this right, so correct me if I'm wrong, then it would be creditable for 2% at 60 because it's ongoing, but it's not creditable for 2% at 62. Is that correct?
Correct.
Sweet, thank you.
Oh, John, I'm so glad you understand the law considering you work in governmental relations.
Okay, my question. Longevity.
Longevity.
All right, I met my 10-year threshold
Yes.
mid-fiscal year, and it states that I must work the entire year and I get paid that longevity at the end of the year. And then going forward, I have to work each year to the end of the year, and I get paid at the end of the year, every year. We have contract language in that specification. So for PEPRA members, since they have to work the whole year before they receive that longevity, it's still not credible?
Correct.
I'd want to look at that, but my gut reaction is saying still not creditable because it has to be paid in every pay period in which they perform service.
Even though their contractual language states differently.
Right, because our law states it has to be paid in every pay period in which the person performs service.
They didn't earn it though till the end of the year.
But for 2 at 62, it doesn't, we don't contemplate when they earn it, we contemplate when they perform service.
Longevity, okay, yeah. Special comp's not for service performed, it's for...
But it's still tied to the service that is being performed every pay period.
It's not for additional service.
Correct. If you want us to take a look at that one, just like Megan said, send it over. We'll look at it and see.
Nicole? Hi.
Yes, Vina. Hi, Vina.
Hi. The same thing, same question. In the same case, but if the district has dated, let's say September through June, and they paid it one time, but the date of the longevity says for whole year, for PEPRA member, is still not reportable?
No, again.
Because they are paying for whole year, but make one payment.
In order for, like what Alex was saying, in order for compensation to be considered creditable for 2% at 62, it has to be paid every pay period in which they're performing the service. So in those contracts where it says, yeah, we get that you have worked every pay period in this year, and we're going to pay you once at the end of the year. For 2 at 62, it would not be creditable.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, and so I did mention, and we've kind of each mentioned, that if you do have a situation that you want us to review, so if you both would like to send in the documentation for your situations, do send it to your employer services representative, and you can do that at employerhelp@calstrs.com, or you could call the phone number here on the screen. You could send a secure message through the Secure Employer website. With both of those, we again ask that you attach the documentation. Employer directives here on the screen too, these are helpful. They have information regarding credible compensation. And then that Spring 2019 Employer Connect newsletter, which has more in detail the different scenarios that we walked through today. But I will pass it off to you for questions. No, it's okay. Might be on.
Okay, Sheila Walker, Tama County Department of Ed. We have some high schools that pay period coverage. So they work their periods and so they fill in another period for somebody else.
Okay.
Is that considered overload?
So that's, I would consider that yes, overload, because it's outside their normal like teaching contract. Since in essence, they're kind of like substituting in a way, right? They're filling in for someone else. So that's not really. Oh, I would consider that, yes, an additional assignment, because it's not really in their full-time teaching contract. They're just filling in for someone else, right?
So that would be considered an additional assignment?
Yes. And so if you're at a community college district, then that could be.
This is just a regular high school?
Oh, okay. Yes, so an additional assignment.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh, no. Sorry, I jumped ahead. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, thank you. We'll pass this on. And you should read the newsletter because I wrote it.
Thank you very much, Alex, for, she jived my memory on something though, that I forgot to let you guys all know about. So, for the most part, most of the bills you wouldn't care about because they have to do with divestment, but there was one particular bill that I did want to mention that I was supposed to mention earlier, AB 706 on your matrix. This bill has to do with community college districts in particular, and what it would do is it would remove the 3-year limit for which sick leave must be transferred from a community college district to another community college district when people transfer service. So right now, you're required to provide the sick leave from one employer to the next within 3 years, but after 3 years, then there is no such requirement. But the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges is sponsoring this bill to remove that limit, so it would be, in essence, forever that someone could go back and get their sick leave transferred from a community college district from the past. So, so that will impact your business, I imagine. So that was just a quick update. Yes?
So you opened a can of worms.
I thought I might.
So the AB 1522, the sick leave for all, those 3 days that we give that can go up to 48, and then we basically they can only use 24 of those hours. Those are creditable as far as being able to submit for service when an employee retires.
I'm sorry, can you back up a little bit?
So AB 1522.
Right, that was the
The
healthy
healthy
workplace,
family.
healthy families, yeah.
Yeah, so those are, those days, those 3 days are transferable between our districts and COEs.
Okay,
And then they are, I'm asking kind of a question, and then they are now creditable when an employee goes to retire?
so the scenario is that someone gets sick leave, they're part-timer, they normally.
Substitute.
They get substitute, they're a substitute, they get sick leave, and then
they
they
become a
go
member.
they become a member, okay?
They've got those 3 days hanging out there.
So we would treat the sick leave, we treat all sick leave as sick leave as it comes. We would treat it as any other sick leave for purposes of our plan, is what I would say. And there's an employer circular on that describes
I know
that.
that's why I'm bringing it up, because
So-
that employer circular, that was kind of confusing, because those
Mm-hmm.
3, it's 3 days that an employee can bank up to 48 hours, but they can only use 24 hours in a fiscal year. But each year, basically, 3 days that they may have had kind of disappear, according to the law. And so now it's like,
The 3 days disappears?
yeah, basically it's a use it or lose it kind
Okay,
of thing as
okay.
far as what they can have in the bank.
So if they don't have it at the end of the career, then it doesn't.
But kind of
We don't get
but what's being told in the circular is that we now have to, that's now creditable.
So it's creditable, so if you're a CalSTRS member, so some substitutes are CalSTRS members. And then if they go and retire at the end of the career, if that's whatever sick leave's left at the end of their career, then that can be converted to sick leave for retirement purposes. It's reported to us on their EBR and it's reported.
When they go to retire. It's a little bit confusing because they're really not meant to have that sick leave.
So if they lose
Forever.
if it is a use it or lose it scenario, then they don't have it anymore. It's not accumulated sick leave. It's not, if it's not accumulated sick leave, then you don't report it to us.
Okay.
So in this scenario, for the community college districts, if they don't transfer within the 3 years and that employer has it disappear and they don't have it anymore, and they don't have it at the end of the career, then it's not accumulated sick leave. So if this bill goes through, then hopefully they would transfer it as soon as possible, but ultimately at the end of the career, if an employee goes back and goes to all their employers, they would have to get that sick leave transferred, and then it would be accumulated, and then it would be reported to us, and it could be included in their benefit.
It was just confusing to read that circular because some districts may choose to front load the three days, and then basically at the end of the fiscal year, you've lost that time.
Okay.
Some districts choose to earn an hour for every 30 hours worked, and they can do a carryover of that time for up to 48 hours. But then basically you're gonna lose 3 days or 24 hours at the end of the fiscal year. So what's confusing is all of a sudden to see this AB 1522 getting put into the mix of our regular earned sick leave time. You know, I'm not quite understanding because California law doesn't say this time lasts forever.
Right, and so the circular does say that it shall be treated as sick leave for all purposes, for all other purposes for CalSTRS. So, and it also talks about how if you use that sick leave, if you, I guess, I don't know how a substitute does it, but a substitute uses sick leave, then that's
put on
paid.
assignment
Then
and
that's
then-
paid
and then
leave,
call in.
that's paid sick leave, and they would be reporting it to us as
Yes,
credible
we report
compensation.
it.
As credible compensation.
That part I
Right.
get. It's
So
when they go
then-
to retire.
Right, so then retire, it's as if it is any other leave, any other sick leave. So if it is accumulated sick leave at that retirement, if it's still on the books, and the employer reports us to it, we are going to use that in the benefit calculation.
All right. Dina, I'm gonna ask you what you think later.
Okay. Am I doing this, or are you doing it? So then our next presentation, there's no other questions about any of that. Our next presentation is Marko Masunic for crediting contributions.
I saw the button being pressed earlier.
You're on, you're green.
I meant for the height. Oh. All right, so my name is Marko Masunic, and for some of you that don't know me, well, probably everyone here, my mom's a teacher, and she's retiring this June, and she promised me that she'll be watching this live stream, so I just have to do something really quick. Turn to camera one. Hi, Mom. Okay, now I got that out of the way, we can go into the contributions of crediting. Also, one last thing I need to mention. My mother did, this is another little joke, it doesn't have to do anything with this. We'll see how well it goes. So, my mom promised me that she wouldn't show any of her colleagues because of, it might be embarrassing for me and I turn really red really quickly. But I did say, oh, you have full ability and full rights to use this with your children. So as an elementary school kid, nothing seems more daunting and more evil than if I get in trouble, I have to watch this guy stand in front of everyone and do a presentation for 10 minutes about crediting of contributions for CalSTRS members. The joke was better in my head, but okay. So in this agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about the current process of what we're doing now at CalSTRS, as well as what we're planning on doing in the future with crediting of contributions, a little bit of how it affects the stakeholders, and implementation timeline of what we're going to go forward. So here at CalSTRS, we look at everything as a process, and we're always evolving, we're always learning, and we're always doing new things. So this is a time and area where it came to our attention that we can actually fix and actually help the employers in this certain aspect. So this is what kind of grew this little thought and idea. So our current process is that the employer, either the direct reporting school districts or the county offices of ed, They send us the check and file, and then us at CalSTRS, as soon as we get the file uploaded, we immediately are able to process it and look at the amounts and able to calculate, based on the submitted file, how much is owed to us. So we then determine whether there is a refund or whether we have to contact you for a collection as well. So once this happens and we determine that there is a refund, we then work with the SCO, which is the State Controller's Office, and we send the information to them, and then they issue a warrant. I'm not sure if it's either a warrant or ACH, whatever the County Office of Direct Reporting has set up, but that can take up to 2 weeks. So that's one of the areas that we want to try to eliminate for you guys. So depending on when you receive the warrant from the SCO, it could take 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks to receive the warrant, and then depending on whether you have a bank run or whether you have some type of deposit, in-house deposit, it could take even longer for the money to get back to your account. So the first side is that we kind of want to talk about the first two squares kind of do a brief summary of what I just spoke about, how the employer, the county offices, and the direct reporting, they send us the file. And then we review the file and then determine whether there's a refund that needs to be done. So with the crediting, what we're looking at doing is enacting it for monthly contributions, penalties and interest, as well as return of excess contributions. So with that means is that you wouldn't get a physical check from the SCO, you would have a credit on your account. So the positives of this is that you can then associate it to another file right away. So when you submit a file to CalSTRS, and if there's a credit or refund doable, you'll see that right away within like 1 or 2 days of uploading the file and the payment getting processed. So immediately you can go in there and assess that credit into any other file or any other invoice that's already outstanding. So with this, it kind of has like a quicker turnaround. So you're not sitting there waiting for us or the SCO to process a return of payment. We're looking at best practices, and this is one of those areas that we really wanted to focus on, is that this is an industry best practice of crediting for individuals and for employers. So we're looking at that, as well as we're also getting engagement from you guys. So this is one of the processes in which is presenting it to you, the staff, as to get feedback as well. So we're looking for feedback and engaging with you, so we don't want surprises. Like, I enjoy birthday surprises, but when it comes to money, I don't like surprises. So we want to make sure that everyone is aware going forward, you know, like, we don't want you to be surprised, like, why do I have a credit on account already, like, what's going on? So we want you guys to be well aware of the process that's going to be implemented going forward. So with this, another positive is the reduction in penalty 4. So that's late money that comes in. So with that, because you have a credit on the account, you're able to then implement it to another file or another invoice almost immediately. So that should greatly reduce the penalty for interest that you have going forward, because you're able to just go click, done, apply it, next. To quote one of those songs, thank you, next, but I don't know how. So this is the implementation timelines. So the spring right now, we're talking about the Employer Advisory Committee. This is where we're kind of getting the knowledge out there and throwing it out there. So again, so you guys don't get surprised. We have roadshows that are going out, as well as communications. So you guys will be informed as more of the process and more of the details going forward. But we are looking for a fiscal year 19-20 enactment. So we are looking to implement it next year. Again, you'll see this in SO and in emails as well. That went kind of quickly, and I apologize for talking quickly, but now we have the opportunity for questions. Yes.
Veena from Orange County. Originally, it did sound good. But then when we started thinking how much work it will create for our office, It looks like we'll be doing a lot of bookkeeping for our districts. And I'm going to just use an example. Let's say we received a check. We had filed a dispute for penalties. First thing, is it going to apply same thing for penalties and interest invoices?
Yeah, you can use your credit account for penalties and interest.
Okay.
So
Because
any money that comes to us,
Okay, because we have multiple, like 40 districts. Let's say right now every month we start with a zero balance. We clean it up after we get done. If you send us a check, we forward it to the district. We are done at the county office. But now when you send us a credit, we will have to make sure first to wait for 1 month. When our next report is due, to use the credit. We cannot use it right away because we have to wait till our next report comes to use it. Secondly, let's say we had a district where they were penalized for $167,000 because of the audit. Later on, it got refunded after reviewing, after the dispute for 150 whatever thousand. Let's say their contributions were only 100, So now we have to go to the following month because we can only out of 151 apply 100 to District A next month. So it will be a lot of bookkeeping for multiple districts. And then when we get a check, we have a list of employees. We forward it to the district. These are the employees. We just settle everything on that cycle. So now we won't be done on that cycle. It will be a prolonged, painful process.
it should be fairly similar to with receiving the check because you can still do journal entries from your minor districts that you're pulling the money from. It's just instead of getting an actual physical check, you'll just have the credit on your account. So you can still credit.
No, it won't. Actually, I brought information to show you exactly how it will work, It won't be. It will be a lot of bookkeeping for us. After I went through, I realized how much we will have to keep on going. So that means we will never have a zero balance, like get done every month. And what happens when the next fiscal year starts? You will move that credit to next year?
Yeah, the credit stays on your account, correct.
Yeah, can you give an option to the district whosoever wants the check and who wants to use the credit?
At this time, we're not looking at that option.
Can you look into it? Thank you.
I guess I do have a question back, because again, my name is Lucy Arbuckle, I'm the Director of Accounting. So we're in the conceptual period, and really, we've talked to our sister pension system on the other side of the river, and they are doing credits for everyone too. And so we're really trying to be in line with what a lot of pension systems are doing. But I guess my question, and really, I just really want to understand, because on our side, it's really just thinking, hey, all we're hoping that the counties are going to do going forward is really shorting the payment back to us. And then instead of receiving a physical check, like Marco was saying, is we won't be giving you the cash, because I know some of the problems that you guys have had in the past is we're cutting you, you're going to wait for our refund, even though, here, let me back up. So penalties and interest, one perfect example. You're going to dispute it, but we're going to require you to send me money. But it doesn't make sense, because once the dispute is approved, we're going to have to go back and cut a check and give it back to you. But that in itself, with your resources and my resources, I think we spent a lot of time and effort just trying to work through that process. So that's one of the pain points that we're trying to go through in terms of like, okay, what is the most effective and efficient way for your group and our group to really go through this process? Because we can't also pick and choose like, okay, I'm going to do crediting only for contributions, but we know that there's a lot of ways to refund the money. And I know one of the ed code section that we're revisiting too is saying, hey, you know, as much as possible, we don't really want to return the money because once it gets to the fund, we want to try and keep it within the fund. But that's why we're thinking, hey, maybe crediting of contributions is a good way because it will reduce your penalties and interest. Because if you think about it, money is already in the system. And so, I mean, like I said, we're not saying this is what we're going to do, like whatever it is that we just conceptually say, but we're really trying to make sure what works best for everyone. We have over 60 counties here, and what works best for the majority of the population, because it's really hard to customize it so for one or two or one or two counties, but really what works for everyone.
Okay, so we're an advocate of being able to apply the funds to the next file that we want to apply it to, not the next available file, because those funds are specific for the report we report for, because we submit 7 supplemental files a month, and we make those payments individual for each one to help us calculate penalties and interest, is why we do it.
Yeah.
But if I have an end-of-the-month file for my 24 main districts, and I need those funds that are extra to be for my next month's file, I want that money to sit there until I say, put it to that file. Because I know I have the lines corrected and reported there. However, I like it being as idea for those that would like to have the monies refunded back, because maybe they found out it shouldn't have been reported to begin with, but we already sent you the funds because the funds are due before the file is.
Yep.
Then they may need those monies back sooner, depending on how they do their processes. So that's where we're at.
Is it hard? And trust me, guys, I'm really just trying to understand this process. Is it really difficult to estimate the amount of the file that's coming in? Yes. Okay, because sometimes, like, I get, like, so, what do you call this? Because sometimes I'll return this much amount of money. It's like, oh my goodness, this is a lot of money that's sitting with us that you guys could have been using for something else. And it's just really curiosity. I'm really trying to make this better because same as you, I don't want money sitting on my account, but I really want to make this process better for both of us.
I can speak for our county. What processes on payroll doesn't necessarily get reported to STRS in this case. Same thing for the other side of the house across the river. Because not everything gets caught when we audit. We only have a certain amount of days to audit for payroll. Then we audit the files again for retirement reporting, and we find things being reported that shouldn't have been, or they were set up as a classic member instead of PEPRA, or vice versa. Some money's owed, or they're overpaid. All those scenarios add up and makes those files not the amount of money we have available to pay you, which is why the check doesn't ever balance to the report we're submitting. And on top of that, in between all these payrolls, we get requests from CalSTRS themselves asking us to correct previously reported lines, which have contribution impacts at times, and they want it processed before we can do it through payroll to make the check right, which throws us off more.
Okay. No, we're here to get feedback because we're in the incubation period. We want to make it really what's best for both of us. It may not be perfect. Any change in process is not going to be perfect.
I just want to agree with the group that our being able to request a check would be a good thing.
I'm sorry, what was it?
I just think, I agree with the group that our being able to request a check would be a good thing. Because if we have a large sum of money, on file with you, we may need to get that back. We have districts that are in fiscal distress, and we may need to get that back into their funds as opposed to sitting with CalSTRS.
So my understanding was prior to implementing P&I, we never really did the refund. And this was previous to my understanding. Yeah. Oh, so they still refund, it's just that it waits for the end of the fiscal year. Okay. Because I was just trying to understand, because I'm trying to understand what was previous and what changed after P&I and what we're moving forward, like what changed. And of course, definitely wanting to hear your concerns. That way we know we're incorporating everything.
My other thing that I thought about is the excess contribution check that we received around August. Ours last year was 1.2 million. So if we, depending on timing, if we have to wait to credit that back to another file, we wouldn't be able to give it back to our districts. So we're a trust fund, so we don't have 1.2 million to give to our districts right away to give back to the employees. So the employees are going to have to then wait to get back their excess contribution refund.
Okay.
Over here. In the beginning, you had asked, how hard it was to keep track of, and I just want to kind of link off what Venus said, and I'm going to give you an example that maybe from our perspective might help you understand. So let's say you go to lunch with your friends, and the total's $20. Everybody gives you $20, and then you find out it was only $4.17. Now you have to keep track of that 87-cent credit, and then the next time you go to lunch, they give you $5 again, and this time you get another credit. Now you're keeping a general ledger for every single person, a plus and a minus. There's no end. That is.
What you guys are doing it now is once you guys get credited, you then turn around and cut the checks back out to the school districts, or you don't always do that.
But it's like a final ending point. What you're asking is just to keep it going like one string, and it's.
My goal is to keep it zero. Trust me, I don't like to be the banks for all the counties. That's, it's really hard for us to going through this because at the end of the day, we're not everyone's banks. I don't want to be holding your money because I don't even want to hold my mom's money because I just don't. So really our ultimate goal is to have everyone be zero too, and that's why we're saying as soon as the other file comes in, and I don't think it's going to be that long because the file comes in on the 4th to 5th business day, and like you said, cash is usually due earlier. And I'm not trying to argue that my way is right. I just really want to have a really good educated conversation here because we're learning something new, and we're just giving you an idea of our thinking process in terms of like why we're going this route and not really saying that this is the final route.
So my real question was, when is it considered available? The day that it's available so if it's available today, then if my file needed monies by today.
Yep.
Okay.
When the file comes in and then the system matches the file in the cash, then it's on your account, then you can use it. You can use it for any, if let's say you use a supplemental file, it comes in and you need the money for it, it should be there available for you to use. Where's Cassie?
I just want to remind everyone, if you can please give your name and your employer, that's very helpful as we're collecting input on this issue. Thank you.
Hi, can I say something really quickly? I'm Cassie, I'm from the contributions unit. I just wanted to explain a couple other processes that we're trying to enhance. So currently we get some frustration or complaints when employers will ask us to split a payment. Maybe you sent us money and you had intentions of reporting a retro or something else. We've gotten requests for us to sit on the money or to split payments, and that's not in part of our current process. So current process is if you have an extra $500,000 sitting with me and you ask me to split it, I can't. I have to refund that money back to you. You're turning around, giving it back to me so you can associate it to another file. We're trying to enhance systems and processes like that. So with the crediting method, you have this money. Maybe you intended to report a retro. For whatever reason, you had so many errors, you had to put it to the side, put it back on a report. Now it's sitting there, you can utilize it. We have quite a few counties that do supplemental files. I think last I checked, there was about 35 counties that actually are submitting supplemental files. So we're getting quite a few files in. We wanted to be able to build that flexibility, like Lucy said, so that you can apply it as soon as it's available. Part of the thought process as well was to inform you all on what the credit is, what it was associated to, so that you can try to help you keep track of it. So if file number 12345 comes in, you associated it, and you have a credit of $20,000, you know that $20,000 was from 12345 or things like that. So we were not just going to blindly throw a credit up there. We wanted to be able to give you information so that you can kind of track, because our understanding is some employers do maybe put their independent districts on supplemental files or their charters on supplemental files, so you're obviously managing your money differently in each county. So we were trying to add that flexibility so that you could follow the process to try to track that. So I just wanted to add that in there because that is one of the biggest complaints that I know my staff get, is the not being able to split the payments or sitting on the payments. So again, this is a process that would help with that situation.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I'm Catherine from Sutter County Superintendent of Schools. And one of the issues that we've had come up lately is, first of all, like Teresa from Stanislaus, we estimate what that 95% is going to be in that first, that's the beginning of the month. And sometimes we do overestimate, but we know that we'll get our check right away. Well, I could easily see that after 6 months, we might have built up a credit with you guys, say of $150,000, for example. Well, we just received our first P&I invoice for one of our charters. So then that means that that money could be applied to that P&I. Now we have to collect the money from the charter because that money wasn't for the charter. And so that brings a logistic nightmare around for 1,000 reasons. This is just one example, but all the reasons that everybody has spoke about is why it's so important that you just go ahead and issue that credit back to us so we can put it back where it belongs, so that the folks that get the P&Is and actually have contributions due are actually paying it, not paying it with somebody else's dollars.
Hi, Juanita Lopez, Sacramento County. You know, we already have a running balance at CalPERS. We're used to doing that. We make our payments, they apply it, you know, at times. That's not such a bad idea, actually. But when it comes to P&I and excess contributions, I would say, like, CalPERS always separates out anything that is not contributions. It cannot be applied to contributions. So like if you have penalties and interest, that's not contributions, that's a fee. And excess contributions, like she said, you know, that's huge, that comes back. We want to apply it and give it back to those districts as soon as possible. I mean, I can understand the contribution payments and having a balance and applying the credit as it is. But when it comes to P&I mean, my opinion, my boss's opinion here, we would probably like to have those separated out where we can, you know, especially when there's disputes and the refunds that are coming back, we want to give that back to the district as soon as possible. We don't want to hold on to it, just like you guys don't want to hold on to it.
Yeah, and thanks for the feedback. And I think that's what Cassie was alluding to, was with the flexibility of this, we're not applying the cash to whatever. It's going to be up to you. You can have 150,000 in there. You can choose to apply it or not apply it. You can choose to hold on to it and wait for the next file to come in. I mean, it's not my money, so I don't think I should be making that decision for you. I think going into the portal and saying, it's just like going to your bank account and say, okay, what bills do I want to pay today? Oh, I want to pay my Comcast bill or my PG&E bill. Then I'm going to choose to use my money to pay that bill. Now, if I'm disputing a credit card charge and I know this is not my payment, I'm not going to pay this bill because it's not my money. Now, it's just understanding that I could incur an interest and charges because I didn't pay my credit card bill, then that's the risk that I'm willing to take. But I know I'm not going to use my credit to pay for the credit card. The same way that we're trying to build this functionality to make you guys make your own decision in terms of like, I have 150, I don't want to use this for contributions, then you don't have to. You can choose to use it for any other invoice that could come in, and it's really your freedom.
Hi, Vicki Lua with Kern County Superintendent of Schools Office. I don't have a problem with getting a credit back and holding it so that I can apply it to my next file. But when it comes to the STRS excess refunds, I don't think that that can be done with a credit. Mine last year was over $5 million, and I have to split that up and give it to each different district. I can't do that by applying it to a file.
Anyone else? Well, thank you very much.
There's the contact information on the bottom of the screen. We'd like to get as much feedback as possible, and you know, this is really great feedback. It's fun, so.
If you hate it, you guys know my name.
Well, that was a very robust conversation and discussion. Thank you very much to our colleagues in finance. And so we'll move forward to the portion of our agenda for open forum and discussion. We do have some subject matter expertise here from Member Account Services that can help with any TRL-related questions. Otherwise, we do have partners here from CalSTRS. Yes, please.
Okay, Sherry Hanson from Sacramento County Office of Education. I'm just curious if CalSTRS, or actually if any of my compatriots here have heard of Swing Education. They are I guess basically I would call them a temp agency for substitute teachers.
You know, I think I have a card. Someone gave me a card of theirs that I had in my pants the other day. So.
My concern, they're courting one of my districts. And does anybody in here from any of the county offices have districts that use them? Because I know they have school districts they say this, do this for, mostly in the Bay Area. They say they employ the substitute teacher, and then they send the teacher out. You put your jobs online, and then they fill the jobs with their substitutes who work for them. But the sub teacher is coming into the classroom and teaching kids, which sounds to me like creditable service, right? But I'm not seeing where any of this is being reported to CalSTRS. So I'm wondering if you guys are aware of this and if you have any concerns, or should just tell my district, hey, go ahead, it's just like a temp agency, or?
Well, hello. I have not heard of Swing, but we have heard of like temp agencies, basically. So at a very high level, I would definitely, again, this is one of those things where we want to see some documentation and try and figure out exactly what's going on. But at a very high level, the only service that it's creditable here is those that are performed for an employer. A temp agency is not considered a CalSTRS employer, so it wouldn't be creditable service.
Right, but they're walking into the school district, into the classroom. So.
But the school district isn't their employer.
What if they're a retiree?
Well, yeah, yes, then that is creditable, well, not creditable, but it should be reportable here.
It should be reportable.
Because it's,
We have no way.
as a retiree, it is because we want to know any work that they're doing.
We have no way of knowing because they're being employed through this agency. So, I mean, I have serious concerns about it.
I have serious concerns about it as well, now that you're bringing it up. Megan, I see you over there. Talk loud.
So just to clarify one point, so like Nicole said, for credible service, you have to be employed by an employer. So if they're employed by the temp agency or a third party, it's not creditable. The reason it's credible for a contractor is because that's not creditable service, that's retired member activities. And there we will look at a third party vendor or employer for purposes there. So if you have someone performing service at one of your districts and they're employed by, I think it was Swing or one of these other temp agencies, and they're not retired, we want to see it. Not creditable, we don't care. If they are retired, you see on REAP they have that service retirement status. It's considered retired member activities, and then we would want to see it reported because the earnings for that, even though you're not paying it, go towards their earnings limitation, because that's, for lack of a better word, money out of our pocket for contributions for an active. It is, but the way our law is currently written, it can only come to us if it's creditable. So, I mean, we can't get involved in how folks hire people, but to the extent that we can prevent employees from collecting a retirement benefit but still working, that's why that was added to retired member activities. We don't have the same rule on the active member side for credible service.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? We have one in the back. And Vina?
I just want some clarification on the temp agency, because my understanding, the way it was explained to us by our DBAS department from our county office, they said if it's a temp agency or an agency that's not reporting to CalSTRS, that we don't have to report those retiree contribution earnings. And I keep questioning them on that.
No, I think you do have to report them. I mean, I
Megan
think
contribute to STRS or not, correct? Whether
Yeah,
it's a temp agency that participates.
if they're a third part, they're employed by a third party, then they would be and they're performing retired member activities, then they need to be reported to us. And we will catch that in an audit. I mean, yeah.
I know, I'm working through that right now.
Yeah. So,
Sorry. That's why I'm asking for clarification.
okay, yeah, it needs to be reported to us.
We have a question here, and I think Vina was next, and then we have
I
Riverside.
just wanted to clarify, if a teacher takes time off, like a leave of absence, and because the district has received some grants and work as an independent contractor but not creditable service, there is no concern of any kind, right? I mean, I understand they won't have full-time service, but independent contractors are not reportable at all.
Right, I think that
Like,
that's,
just like we are talking right
it's
now.
just for retired, so it's just for retirees.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
I know I received some email about
Okay.
that case, so, thank you.
So for your swing question with them hiring possible STRS retirees doing teaching, one of our districts was audited less than 5 years ago by CalSTRS, and they looked at the independent contractors, and they found a health contractor, don't remember the exact position, but it was a reportable position to CalSTRS. In this case, the owner of the company was a retiree of STRS. So that owner needed to prove that she didn't do the work, that she had employees perform the work. And then the district had to look them all up in CalSTRS to see if they're a member or not, or if they're a retired member, in order to clear that finding. Just so going forward, that district now requires them to report to them every month on their invoice who performed the work, and ID information so they can look them up and report them if necessary.
Random question for you. There used to be an earnings limitation for retired members for like districts that are in fiscal distress. They have a state administrator appointed. In LA County, we've been dealing with that a lot more with districts in fiscal distress, and that's a good place to, when we need to appoint a fiscal advisor or a fiscal expert, or even an appointed person. There used to be an exemption for that. It sunset a couple years ago. Any idea, if anybody knows, whether that could potentially come back, or any moves to bring that back at all?
The post-retirement employment, always, people talk about post-retirement employment all the time. So I don't know if it will, but it could. Things come back. I mean, it's legislation. Things come back, and so it does happen. So I can't. I mean, it may. Sorry.
Anna Lambert, Riverside. Excess contributions. It used to be STRS was calculating them every month. I haven't seen, not that I want them, but I haven't seen any calculations in about 6 months.
Cassie can answer that.
John, would you like to take that?
Isn't it quarterly? Is it quarterly
So
now?
we were evaluating them monthly. We weren't necessarily releasing them monthly because we got a lot of feedback that you necessarily didn't want them monthly. So surprisingly, I haven't heard from anybody except for now. We are actually evaluating them, and we may be releasing some payments over the summer before the annual update process. We will, if we do, obviously put a SO announcement out there, and then it'll go through the normal process, and we would refund it back at this point.
Thank you. And we have a question here in the front.
So my name is Cindy from Butte Community College District. I have a question about excess sick leave. So we've gotten some conflicting information and are trying to interpret Ed code. So if we have, say, a 10 or 11 month counseling, that's their full time is a 10 or 11 month contract to get 1 year of service credit. If they work an overload in the summer for that 11th or 12th month, we have an MOU currently in place in our bargaining agreement where they get, if they work at least 8 hours in a given month, they get an additional day of sick leave. Is that excess sick leave on the retirement and the express benefit report?
It's not. So, and this gets confusing, but it's basically, it's based on the pay periods for your employer. So if your employer provides anybody in your district with 12 pay periods, then excess is anything beyond 12. So in your example, it wouldn't hit excess until presumably, and the answer to that is everybody is 12, or I think we had, or maybe still have, one employer that had 13 pay periods in a school year. So for pretty much every district, it's 12 days is basic sick leave in a year, and then in excess of 12 would be excess. And then for that one district that was 13, it would be anything in excess of 13.
So if we have a 10-month employee, they're front-loaded 80 hours of sick leave, 8 hours per month.
Uh-huh. That's all basic.
What's that?
And that would be all basic, right?
Right, that's all basic.
And then if they got 2 extra days for some reason or another.
Well, if they, yeah, okay, so then if they work in their off months, if you
Right.
will, if they work an overload in their off months, but they're not getting any more than 8 hours in either of those extra months, is it still basic?
Yeah, it's per year.
It's per
So
year.
even if they got
Okay.
two per pay period, but they still had less than 12, then they did not have any excess. Those are all basic.
So, okay, so I'm wondering if it's written that way into their bargaining agreement and we can grant them the sick leave, we just don't call it.
Yeah. So it's just about, and you should be keeping track of it, and they always need to use basic first. And then at the end of the career, then you would report that to us as the numbers of basic and numbers of excess, and we bill you for the excess.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I believe we have a question in the back of the room. Did you have a question? No? Okay. Okay, thank you. Sean?
Sean from LA. Well, I just had a piggyback on that one. You're not saying, I just want to clarify, if a 10-month employee only works 10 months, but a district gives them 12 days, you're not saying all 12 days are considered basic sick leave, are you?
Yes. Yes, we are. And there's a circular on this as well that didn't.
I believe there's a circular on it as
a
well.
more recent one that really clarifies that it says 12 and 13 days.
Yes, and I would have to go back and look to see exactly the circular or directive number, but I believe there is one out there. But I think one of the things that we have to make sure that you guys understand is the idea of excess sick leave is really for CalSTRS purposes. So the fact that you're giving them, and the contract, they're working 10 months and they get 1 day is 1 day per month, so 10 would be the maximum, and then they get something over that. We're not trying to say that what you consider to be basic or excess, or what is just the normal baseline of sick leave, and then if they earn more. We're simply talking about what, for CalSTRS purposes, and what we do with it is basic is anything under 12 and under, and excess would be considered anything over 12. Does that help clarify?
So for the August agenda, we were looking for training topics. And so I have a note that there's been quite a few questions about sick leave. So unless any other trending topic comes up, I think we can partner with our subject matter experts in service retirement. Sick leave isn't something that member account service administers. So we can partner with our service retirement folks and see if we can get you some overarching training on sick leave and get a lot more of these questions answered by those guys at the August meeting.
I know I saw some more hands up.
Not on? Now it's on. Sherry Hansen, Sacramento County Office of Education. So I've been involved in a lot of discussions with CalSTRS about excess sick leave because we give a lot, okay? And what you're saying about it's 12 days is exactly opposite of everything they've told me. So, I mean, I've probably been, because I know you guys are trying to reevaluate the way you do excess sick leave. I've probably been involved in maybe 5 conference calls with STRS about this
Yeah,
because of how much we give. It's a
Yeah.
very hot topic for us. And they've told me, so I have 11-month employees and I have 12-month employees. And they've told me that the 11-month employees, it's how much they get for each month, and anything over that is excess, and then the 12-month employees is different. So for 11-month, they've said 11 days, anything over is excess, and 12 months, anything over 12 days is excess.
I'm not surprised, and I'm sorry, I mean, the
So
problem.
we
the
changed,
problem-
we changed about 4 or 5 years
Okay.
ago the way we were doing it.
Okay. So, this is the way I just described, and we're gonna have people from SR come the next meeting to give you guys a little bit more information on this, but what I just described is how we're auditing to what I described.
Okay, good.
It's
I
the
want
way
my
we're
money back.
administering it. And on top of that is, it's the way the statute's written, it's not very clear. So we are also looking to do some sort of a cleanup for sick leave in the statute. But we have to engage with stakeholders and to really flesh that out. And so we're gonna be doing more of that before the next legislative session. So maybe.
Because I would love it to be 12,
Fingers
like I
crossed,
said.
there might be some clarification in statute for the next year. But I can't promise that. And it's because if you read that statute, reasonable people can come to different conclusions. And so people have before in the past, but we are, as an organization, we're I think very much all giving the same exact message now. I think, I'm pretty sure.
So you're saying that when you audit, you're saying anything over 12?
Yes.
Okay, because that saves me a lot of money.
So, Robin,
Good news, good.
Yes.
Is there a reason why you can't just put excess contributions in the DBS account rather than, I'm a STRS member.
Yeah.
I would be cool with that.
Yeah, no,
You know, instead
good.
of
Tell
getting,
your,
like, a few pennies.
union rep or tell your
Is it really about the
stakeholders.
unions?
So it's really about the funding plan. So CalSTRS funding plan is not something that's CalSTRS staff drove or even the board. The board advocated for full funding, and how we got there was something that the stakeholders negotiated, and so it's their fund, they're the ones who are sort of owners of that policy. And the funding plan was about the DB program. And so the parties involved made it so it was specific to the DB program. So when those contributions go up, they didn't go up on DBS. And so at the end of the year, when we decide what is DBS and what is DB, we have to return those contributions per the funding plan.
It's just a pain.
Yeah, I
You know, we get all these
understand.
stale
I
dated
understand,
checks,
yeah.
and it's just very messy. Yeah.
So like I said, I mean, if there are ways you can advocate through your superintendents for them to contact their advocates, because the employers were part of that funding plan, and these are things that maybe member groups and employer groups and everybody can try and work together on, and work with the governor's office, and maybe there could be a fix in the future. I wouldn't say it wouldn't happen, to tell you the truth, but it could happen. Yeah, no, it could happen, and that makes sense. And when we drafted it, or our original draft, one of the original versions didn't have that. It had it going to DBS. So, but yeah, so I know we've talked about a lot here. I know, and we provide a lot of information to a lot of the advocates and stakeholders have the information that we provided about it, and so it's people can advocate for it.
Thank you. Good question. Teresa, you have another question?
I do.
And then Nicole.
My question is regarding an e-bulletin that was posted just a few days ago for this weekend's system maintenance that's happening. It's stating here that you'll be doing a file adjustment again for another group of members, non-members, that possibly had a refund and then money's reported after the fact, et cetera. the last time you did a file, we only had 60 days to review those lines that you were in question of. And if we didn't have it done in time, you still were making the adjustment. This time, we're not even getting the chance to look at what you want to adjust because, in my opinion, some of these may just have date corrections that are needed. And I would prefer to keep the monies at your office, not refund back to me for me to have to process and resubmit to you again. So I understand that you're on some type of timeline, but we really do need 90 days to review these. When you first started auditing and looking at your old data, you were sending us information to adjust, and we worked through those with you. And I felt like we were doing that pretty timely. I just don't understand why we're getting so rushed all of a sudden and not allowing us to look at our own files or lines that were reported to you.
Very good. Thank you for your input. Nicole, did you want to address that in any way?
I don't know that we can necessarily address that at this point. It was a project decision, and from what I understand, I know limited amount of this, that the reason why there wasn't an opportunity for employers to look at this data ahead of time was because we weren't actually changing any status on the employees or on the members. It was really looking at the lines that were reported afterwards. I hear what you're saying though, Teresa, I get it. And unfortunately, because the way that the process is set up, when we do make the changes, which will happen this weekend, we did our best to look at the data as much as possible, and this whole process was to also make it so that you guys didn't have to do a lot of work on your end. So it's kind of like, we try one way and it doesn't quite work. We try another way, it doesn't quite work. So the bottom line is we have to make sure that the data is accurate for our new system. And this was the decision to move on how to move forward. So if, you do happen to look at some of the lines that once we give you that data extract, that post-fix extract, if you look at lines and you realize that there should be some different adjustments made, you'll have the opportunity to make those adjustments just like any other adjustments that you can make. And it's just like normal process at that point. Yes, Vina.
I just wanted you to know those adjustments, they are actually very, very painful. Because some people, they are not in our system now because they are going back to 1980 or whatever year. We don't want to hire those employees to issue a check. Secondly, you can issue W-2, maybe some of them are not alive anymore. So it's lots of issues, that come with those adjustments. I don't know if it was in the system, if you could have just left them alone.
Thank you for the feedback. We'll definitely take that back to our project team to, let them know the frustration and the hardship that you guys feel about this.
They don't know what to do with that money, how to get hold of the employees, rehire them. We can't rehire. They are not our employee. If we hire them, it creates new hire reports. There's a lot of things that issues come with those adjustments. And of course, the time she mentioned that there was no way we could review all those, Thank you.
You're welcome. I do have one quick go back to the excess sick leave. I quickly asked a staff member, and it is Employer Directive 2018-03 is the one that talks about excess sick leave is anything over 12. So if that helps for reference. And thank you, Samantha, for getting that for me.
Great questions. Anybody else? Very well. And so we will be looking to have our next meeting on August 7th, Wednesday, August 7th. Obviously, if there are any agenda items that you're interested in submitting for our consideration to make sure that we can provide a presentation to you, please share that with us. Also, too, we have, again, our meeting in November. November 13th, the reminder was that when you come in November, our service lot will be closed due to construction. We'll only have one entrance, and it'll be very, very crowded here. So across the street at DGS, you'll be able to park. Want to thank you for your time. I want to thank our staff for what they contributed to our meetings. And with that, this meeting is ended. Thank you.